The Lunar Guardsman. Written by Krimar. Chapter 6. An Honest Day's Work. Part 2.
That drawing kind of looks like Rigdon. Is it yours?
Applejack asked, shining armor. It was a gift from him. He used to tell stories to Twilight, often at bedtime. His people would have thousands upon thousands of them, as he says. This is one of his favorite ones. Twilight begged him to retell it when he visited once, and I fell in love with it. He made this for me on my next birthday.
Whoever this is supposed to be, he sure looks scary. His armor looks a lot like Rigdon's.
If you made a few changes and added the moon imagery, you could almost swear it was him. The drawing was of an armored bipedal creature, much like Rigdon. It wore silver-looking spiky armor with a tattered black cloak. His head looked a bit too big. The helmet had spikes pointing up, resembling like an iron crown, and looked sinister, much like Rigdon's did. He was holding a large club-like weapon. He was standing on the slope of a mountain, bones beneath his feet, and a sinister tower in the distance behind him. Even further behind was a volcano spewing fire and black smoke, darkening the sky. He does. He was the villain of the story, evil incarnate, the Dark Lord. Shining smiled. I wonder why he gave me the picture of him rather than any of the heroes.
Why did he?
He tried to spin some tale about how I needed to be my own hero, and this was a representation of what I was going to fight against in my life. But he gave up halfway. Shining laughed at the memory he was reliving. He admitted in the end that he just preferred to draw him because he looks cooler. He said the real evil guys don't advertise it like that anyway. It was a nice drawing technically, but not to Applejack's taste. She had more of a fancy for peaceful vistas, stallions.
They all go cuckoo over some shining armor,
She thought with a chuckle at her pun. Well, them and Rainbow. Applejack switched the topic back to where they were before being distracted by the strange picture.
Okay, so any ideas why he had been so sour when he first came here? I keep hearing he got into fights, but why?
Applejack asked Shining Armor after telling her about his suicide attempt, that they had spent some time going over what happened next. He told her how Princess Celestia locked him up and kept trying to get him back to his senses. He kept up his constant and violent goading, which she ignored, until he accepted that she was not going to do what he wanted, and his acceptance of it. Rigdon was a very complicated mess, so she tried to make sense of him by going over the beginning again. Apart from what happened to him before he arrived, I can't tell you about that. Princess Celestia's orders. It's not a story you'd want to hear anyway. I only know the basic outlines and I still get nightmares. But if you wonder why he didn't get any better until a lot later, I have a couple of theories now. I am willing to share them, but you must make sure no pony hears about them. And I mean no pony. If this reaches the wrong ears, Rigdon will be lucky to avoid being killed. That includes Princess Celestia too. Her continuous protection is the only reason Rigdon hasn't been killed by the Solars yet. If she loses what little trust she has left in him, and they get a whiff of that... Keep in mind, I wasn't part of the guard then. I was still in school, but I knew Rigdon. He escorted Twilight everywhere, and he brought her home at least once a week. My parents and I always came to know him, and he always was polite and civil with us. It was during one of those visits, actually, when he said something that stuck with me.
What was that?
Applejack asked. We were in the living room waiting for dinner to get ready. Twilight was in the kitchen trying to give Mom a hoof. At one point, he keeps staring at the wall across from him, and I asked him what was so interesting about it. He turns to me and says, I was just admiring your dog. I honestly didn't expect that answer. We had no dog, nor was there any picture of one in the room. So I asked him where he saw it, and he pointed at an empty section in the wall. Applejack felt one of her eyebrows move up in its own volition.
He was saying things?
Yes. No. Wait. I didn't mean it like that. Shining said, planting his hoof over his face. He was looking at the paint. He had seen some time since we had a new layer of paint over there, and there were traces of water damage and dirt. He pointed it out to me, tracing it with his finger. I didn't see it at first, but if you really looked at it and filled some parts with your mind, you could see a dog running. I asked him, how did you make that out so easily? He answered, patterns.
Patterns?
Applejack asked for validation. Patterns, Shining confirmed. He said we were good at seeing patterns. Too good, sometimes. We often see things that not really there. We live and breathe them, you could say. That had got him pretty depressed for some reason now that I think about it.
What's that got to do with all the hassle he's been causing at first?
When I became captain of the guard, I had to review potential security risks, let's call them. That included Rigdon. Checking his history, it got me thinking about that day. Patterns. So, I started looking for them, trying to see them like Rigdon did. Really look at them and fill them in with my mind. He himself, that his kind, lived them. Shining walked into his office, pulling out a very thick folder and brought it over.
That's a pretty big door stopper,
Applejack said with admiration. Shining chuckled as he opened the folder. His most serious episodes occurred when he felt Twilight or Spike were threatened or hurt in any way, but there were other lesser magnitude, often explained as simple losses of control. He leafed through the folder. But if you fill in some parts, you find
a pattern,
Applejack finished. Exactly, said Shining with the satisfaction of a teacher whose student paid attention. His random acts, almost half the time, had two things in common. They always happened in two of the general places in the castle, and always against two classes of ponies. It was always near the living quarters or offices, and always against ponies who worked as aides for the nobility or branches of the government. He pulled a heap of papers from the folder. Shining Armor had separated them into two stacks. One was labeled Random Attacks, and the other Twilight and Spike Attacks. Applejack got hold of one that had Twilight's name. It was full of reports. They all shamelessly pointed to Rigdon as the aggressor, and the sections where the injuries were noted down were all overflowing. She compared them with a few of the other stack. Same deal. Rigdon was still the one that initiated everything according to the guards. But here the injuries were mostly small things, with some exceptions, like a couple of bruises or a terrified pony.
So he had a grudge against powerful folk?
See, I thought that too, but if he did, why didn't he attack them directly? So I looked again, poring over another explanation. After every attack, these reports say that he was caught about 20 to 40 minutes later, often in his room. Compare that with his spur-of-the-moment episodes that involve Twilight and Spike mostly, and you'll find that in most cases he was apprehended almost instantly, often waiting for the guards right where he was.
The tall fellow was working with a plan? All of that was a ruse?
Not all of it, but a lot. I think he was looking for something. He didn't attack those ponies for nothing. He was scaring them off the premises, hiding under the guise of his impromptu violence, to search for whatever he was after. Applejack started to understand.
Their rooms, their offices. He was using their time he had before he got caught to search in there.
Right, Shining agreed, excitement fitting him as someone else followed his reasoning. That's why he was often caught in his room. He was rushing back there to hide whatever he found. He was probably making his own search for patterns while creating one of his own.
What was he looking for? Did you find out?
Shining shrugged. I just got theories, but he got in all that trouble. Kept on it so methodically and stealthily, and easily accepted getting into trouble with Princess for it. There's only one reason I can imagine him doing that for.
Twilight and Spike.
Applejack was certain. If Rigdon cared for one thing, that was it.
But why exactly?
Shining nodded. Patterns again. You know how we first met Twilight, right? Okay. I can tell from your grimace, grisly thing, that it was the first and most serious attack against Twilight that ever happened. But it wasn't the only one. Once again,
patterns.
Gee golly, this was kind of fun and exciting. She felt like a detective just listening and agreeing with him. Princess Celestia was getting her ear talked off to get rid of him. He was getting goaded, through Twilight and Spike, to act dangerously threateningly. There were some rumors spreading about him. I think some pony was trying to get him out of the way, either so they could try again or retribution. I believe Rigdon had realized that, so for whatever he locked in the dungeons or indisposed of other reasons, he must have made a deal with the Princess Celestia to keep Twilight and Spike by her side at all times, no matter what. That way she was safe, even if he wasn't there. Twilight couldn't even come visit us while he was in the dungeons. She even slept in the princess's chambers.
You're thinking Twilight is still in danger then?
That wouldn't do. No pony was touching a hair of her friend's manes while she was around. Shining shook his head. I think that's over with. I told you, he calmed down a few years after his arrival. I think that he was done with his search then.
Wait a darn tootin' moment,
she said suspiciously.
If he found who tried to hurt Twilight, wouldn't he tell you, the princess, or some pony?
Maybe you? Shining laughed outright. Rigdon, let somebody else deal with whoever tried to hurt Twilight or Spike, especially whoever was behind her full napping. Never. I think I can guess what happened. I have no proof, just ideas. But even if I did, I don't know if I would tell the princess. Whoever did this to my little sister deserved what he got from him. He snarled. I think, he said after a short complimentive pause, that Rigdon somehow managed to find out who was behind it, and then he killed him. That's why things calmed down later on. There was no pony out there goading other ponies to get him, and Rigdon himself was basking in a job well done. I searched, but I can't find anything. There were some influential ponies that had gone missing in that time period, but no bodies or signs of foul play were found, so that's a dead end. If he did indeed do something, he was extremely thorough. Applejack contemplated what she learned. Rigdon might have been smart and patient, considering he probably found out the pony that tried to kidnap Twilight, even if it took him years and he did it alone. But that was an if. What if he got the wrong pony? That seemed improbable, since as Shining said, things calmed down. But it just might mean that the real culprit decided to give up. Not likely, but there's a chance. Rigdon went at it alone. He wasted years digging little by little, all this without ever leaving the castle. All of it completely unneeded if he just told the princess about it. But he didn't, because if he did, and Princess Celestia caught the guy, she would imprison him. So Rigdon chose not to. It didn't matter that the threat to Twilight would be gone anyway. Rigdon wanted blood. She didn't like that. Smart, patient, bloodthirsty, and judging from the way he switched from nice guy to vicious, borderline insane. Oh, and let's not forget he tried to commit suicide by Celestia. That's a new one. She bet every single apple on her farm that this was the first time somebody tried to off himself that way. She had a couple more things she needed to ask.
Tell me, how did he hook up with Princess Luna?
Applejack hated having to be the responsible one. Pinkie was convulsing worse by a second, and some pony had to hold her down before she hurt herself more. When Rarity and Fluttershy, to her immense surprise, launched themselves at Rigdon, she was the only one left behind to do this. Did she damn her luck enough yet? Rarity was the first to reach him. She didn't bother with magic. Rarity never did when angry. Instead, with a screech, she hurled herself at Rigdon and tried to punch his face. Rigdon reflexes stopped her. He saw her coming at the edge of his vision, and like lightning, his fist jabbed forward, hitting Rarity in the chest and stopping her mid-jump. Rarity fell down, cradling her aching chest. Spike jumped off Rigdon's back and rushed to her aid.
Are you all deaf? Listen to me and sit down. We are doing.
Fluttershy didn't physically assault Rigdon. She used something else instead.
How dare you!
She yelled. Rigdon had turned towards her, looked straight into her wide stare, and was caught. The stare. It deserved the capital S. Fluttershy described it to Applejack once as an attempt to make someone feel as sorry as possible. Applejack had seen her use it plenty of times, and one time, she was at the right angle to get caught in it a bit. It was unnerving. She felt as if she was looking at Granny's eyes when she once tried lying to her. It brought to Applejack's mind her parents, their eyes telling her they were trusted her to be good while they were gone for their walk. The look in Applebloom's eyes as she followed Applejack's every action, learning from her examples. The steady stare of Big Mac, his quiet assurance that he would always support Applejack all the way. And beneath all those images, a voice that was asking, "Are you doing what is right?" No wonder it brought a dragon to tears. Rigdon was now captivated in the same situation. He was shaking, almost as much as Pinkie under Applejack's hooves was. His face had almost gone sheet white, more than when Rainbow hit him on the side. His eyes had gone wide as saucers, the pupils so dilated there was only blackness in them.
How dare you hit Rainbow, Rarity, Twilight! We have been your friends and this is how you pay us back? Pinkie is hurting, the same mirror who cheered for you and you let her suffer? You're not getting away with this, Buster. You're not gonna let us go, and then, when Pinkie is alright, you're going to give everyone a heartfelt apology.
Fluttershy was lost in her effort to keep her stare right in Rigdon's eyes and delivering her speech. She couldn't see what Applejack did by her side. He was mouthing something, the same two words, over and over, and had started sweating profusely. He was terrified. Applejack couldn't leave Pinkie Pie. She was gurgling now. Her mouth had filled with that terrible foam, and she was unconsciously trying to spit it out. Applejack fought to keep her head sideways and her airway clear. If she turned her head upwards, it would slide back down her throat and choke her. Applejack checked to see if Twilight managed to get up, but no luck. She was still out of it. She called out for Rainbow Dash, desperately trying to get her to return to the fight. Rigdon was so scared out of his mind. When fellas like him felt like that, they didn't back off. They fought back. He was pulling at his hammer from his side, eyes still locked with Fluttershy's. There was a rainbow-colored blur, and Rigdon was away from Fluttershy and rolling on the floor as Rainbow Dash rammed into him. She didn't stop this time, nor did she try staying close to his reach. She was flying around the room, gaining momentum, and when she had enough, she ran back into him with a sound of hooves clashing against metal. Applejack did cheer this time.
I won't let you hurt my friends!
Rainbow yelled.
You stupid, dumb.
He spoke something in his alien language.
You are doing this worse for yourselves. I am trying to stop you from...
Applejack called for Fluttershy to get back and help her. It took a few tries, but Fluttershy was captivated by the hammer that Rigdon dropped. Poor girl probably understood what could have happened there, but this was not the time for that. She could barely keep Pinkie down on her own any longer. Rainbow was holding her own against him, but Rigdon was resourceful and didn't bother playing nice. As he fell backwards with another hit from Rainbow, he reached from the floor and with a startled "Eep!" he pulled the half-conscious Rarity towards him. He looked straight at Rainbow and lifted his hand, ready to bring it on Rarity's face. Rainbow took the bait. Her protectiveness kicked in, and she dove straight for Rigdon. But now he was ready for her, and she was heading in a straight course for him. He shifted his arm's aim mid-swing and punched straight forward instead of down, his fist flying between Rainbow's outstretched hooves and nailing her right on the forehead. There was a crack and Rainbow crashed down, dizzily shaking her head. Rigdon cradled his hand, examining his fingers with a grimace of intense pain. Rainbow had quite the hard skull, so Applejack seriously doubted the breaking sound came from her. He would have been paying attention because the last attack came from the most unlikely source. Spike had enough and jumped on him, making him lose his balance and landing on his back. Spike was mad. Rigdon's threat to really hurt Rarity was the last straw for the baby dragon. His irises were reptilian slits, and fire was coming out of his mouth. He tried to scratch at Rigdon, but his armor proved stronger than his stubby claws. His flame intensified. He turned towards Rigdon's head and took a deep breath.
Bluetooth Flame, stop! I can explain. Don't...
Spike didn't have time to breathe out his fire. It was encased in a blue field of magic and lifted off of him.
Enough!
A voice echoed to the room, stopping them all in their tracks. Luna had decided to intervene. Now, you might wonder about that, but Princess Celestia tried to stop Rigdon from ever meeting Luna, Shining told Applejack.
Let me have a wild guess here. She was considering he might try something?
A pretty solid bet to make. Everything about Rigdon so far pointed towards him trying stuff that wouldn't be welcomed by any pony. If you think about it, it was a wise call. Princess Celestia didn't think that Rigdon would exactly hit it off with the mare that, despite not being under control at the time, tried to hurt Twilight and her friends.
Yeah, that was I was thinking. What changed Princess Celestia's mind?
Shining sighed in resignation. Nothing. We just found out one day that Rigdon had, for all intents and purposes, moved into her chambers. He must have met with her, probably sneaked into the tower right under our noses, and...
Just became friends?
Shining gave her an incredulous stare. It just doesn't fit at all with him. There never was any fight with her, no arguments, nothing. And I wouldn't describe their relationship as mere friendship. Rigdon has become something between her servant, guard, and confidant. They do everything together. It's rare to see them away from each other, and when we do it, it means that one of them is going to get in trouble.
What do they do anyways? I kept hearing they get into trouble, but you make it sound as if they spend most of their time away from every pony.
Most of the time they do stay in Luna's tower. They're up to something, as displayed by their Lunar guard idea, but I have no idea what else. Sometimes they come out of there with some hidden gem from Rigdon's kind, but that's rare. When they're not up there, they get into fights. Sometimes it's Luna, the other times it's Rigdon. About a 50-50, I'd say. Applejack was reminded of what she really wanted to talk about. Shining Armor was the best pony available to tell her about that, but she might not take it well. It was a chance that she had to take. No pain, no gain.
There is something that Luna mentioned today.
She saw that she had Shining's attention and continued.
She said that the guard refuses to guard her chambers, and no pony obeys her command apart from Rigdon. She seemed pretty sour about that.
She trailed off. Shining Armor was looking at her with disbelief. That's what she said? Applejack hesitated.
Isn't that true? There were no guards at all in our tower or servants either.
No, it's true. Kinda. But they themselves are the prime cause.
Because they'd get into fights with the ponies, you mean?
No. You're right. Maids and the rest of the staff are too afraid of them to both go up there. I tried to fix things from my side of things, but I had guards guarding her chambers, but they drove them off. The guards that were posted there came back with near horror stories. Luna was using her magic to ransack through their sleep. Some pony... Who am I kidding? It was Rigdon. Was going through their private belongings and... Well, one of the guards had enough and made a comment something about the lines of, "Can't wait for Princess Celestia to banish her back to the moon again." They went completely berserk. Understandably. The guards were lucky to escape with no life-threatening injuries. After that, some pony refused to go near them, and Princess Luna and Rigdon seemed to be fine with that. In fact, Rigdon forbid me from sending any pony at the tower.
They didn't seem to be fine with it today,
Applejack explained to him.
Luna gave a whole speech to Princess Celestia about it. Plus, the princess seemed to know nothing about that. Haven't you guys told her?
This reeked. This all reeked of high heavens. First they scare a pony away, then they complain about it. What were they trying to pull? Shining seemed embarrassed. He didn't even dare to look at Applejack in the eyes.
In all honesty, Princess Celestia is not being told much.
What? Shining Armor tried to defend himself.
It's just... Princess Celestia has a whole country to look after. Among her other duties, things that we think we can handle or she can't do much about just gets put aside. It's an unwritten rule around here. Princess Celestia doesn't need to know every single thing that happens. It's why we have other officials and ministers after all.
Okay. Let's just ignore all the collective lying you're doing for now,
Applejack said, placing her hoof over her eyes.
And let's get back to Luna's Lunar Guard idea.
Applejack explained to Shining Armor what Luna wanted to do.
That is not a bad idea. I would certainly help relieve all the aggression they have. It was up to me, however. I just let them go at it on their own. I thought there's much that would be in trouble for the two of them if they are careful. If it would mean an end to the Lunar Guard idea, so much the better.
Typically so far, another pony who was against that.
You hate the idea too, huh?
Shining's face betrayed his incredulousness.
Are you kidding me? Do you know what will happen if the Princess Luna goes ahead with that? The Solar Guard will have a fit. They're not raising any trouble now because they don't believe anything will come out of it.
Okay, she had to expect that. Commander Steadfast was pretty clear on how far away from warm he was about that idea. Rainbow had called it right this time.
They don't like competition?
Competition? They don't care about that at all. It's the fact that one pony that they were first founded to kill wants them to have their own personal army.
Applejack blinked. She blinked again. Then she gently hit her ears with her hoof. Nope, they seemed to be working fine. Maybe the problem was her brain was something deeper.
I'm sorry, Shining. It seems I'm a bit tad tired than I thought. Did you just say the Solar Guard is here to kill Luna, or I should go get my head checked?
You don't know how the Solar Guard began, do you?
She shook her head. She never paid attention to all the military stuff. Rainbow might have known, but she would have expected her to say something by now.
It was because of Nightmare Moon. No pony could stand up to her. Every guard regiment that tried was brushed off like flies. Princess Celestia was the only one who could take her on, but it was her sister in there. She held back from really fighting her, getting near killed for it in some of their stories, until she was able to use the elements on her and banish her. Afterwards, the whole fiasco let the Royal Guard know how truly unprepared they were with dealing with really heavy stuff. So they formed the Solar Guard. Their job was to tackle threats that went above the Royal Guard's capabilities, but also defend Princess Celestia. They live by the idea that each one of them dead in a battle protecting the princess is one attack less that Princess Celestia has to deal with. You see, if you girls hadn't managed to deal with Nightmare Moon or Discord, the complete strength of the Solar Guard would be dealing with them next. Applejack didn't feel good about the potential of that attempt.
I doubt they'd be able to do much. Those three didn't really put on a good show,
she said sadly. Poor fellas didn't even deserve what they got.
I didn't see the fight myself, but I heard about it. Rigdon got lucky.
He did end with a couple of deep holes in him,
she agreed.
Not what I meant.
Shining was frowning now. Whatever it was, she was meant to take this seriously.
Rigdon didn't fight their best fighters despite what Luna asked for.
Commander Steadfast was not going to endanger what he considers to be precious commodity that belongs to the princess in a fight over pride. Besides, they were armed and armored with standard Royal Guard gear.
I get better stuff in the Solar Guard?
Much better. I am talking about enchanted armor and weapons the likes of which I have never seen. Not even when they have enough of them do they equip every member. But they have enough to put the smack down on everything. I thought they could get Discord, but Nightmare Moon? She was never going to win. Even if you girls hadn't been there. Wow. Seems like Rigdon really did get lucky after all.
They aren't gonna try anything against Luna, are they? I mean, she's not Nightmare Moon anymore.
No. There's no risk for that. Princess Celestia told Solar Commander Steadfast not to get any ideas, and if there was something the good commander does, it's obeying her wishes. And at least, as long as he believes they are not in danger to herself. If Luna makes the wrong move and they take as a hostile action against Princess Celestia, though, she doesn't stand a chance. Princess Celestia's orders or not.
Little dragon, I applaud your courage and your fighting spirit and your haste to defend your friends. However, if you try to direct your flames against my companion again, I will tear off your scales one by one.
As Applejack was levitated in the air, she made the thought that ponies who performed those kind of threats would yell and shout. Luna didn't do that. She was talking all civil and quiet-like, barely putting any emphasis on her words. It was creepy as heck.
Luna! That's enough. Put them down.
Rigdon was making his way up to his feet again. He favored his right side, considering the smacks Rainbow delivered to his wounded side. He must have been in a real load of pain right now. Good. He took a deep breath.
What do I do?
Luna nodded towards Pinky. Rigdon rushed to her side and gripped her down, using his knees to hold both her legs down.
Pinky did a flawless job consuming the poison, and there was nothing, not the tiniest specks left to identify it. It is our fortune that Rarity did manage to pour a spoonful of her cup before Pinky managed to consume it all. We need to know what poison it was before we try to treat it.
You could still have helped. She was having seizures. Why didn't Rigdon help us instead of attacking us?
Applejack rarely felt anger like that. She kicked and bucked ineffectively in the air. Luna didn't seem to pick up on Applejack's intense displeasure, or didn't care.
There are poison variants that are enchanted to feed on magic to quicken or enhance their effectiveness. There is even a rare one that once it feeds on enough magic, it pollinates the air with itself, poisoning everyone around the victim. We are not dealing with that one, thankfully, but it is enchanted. The magic infusion of a healing spell or a teleport with the power of Twilight Sparkle would kill your friends in seconds. There is nothing we can truly do probably, but she might stand a chance if she is lucky.
Applejack's teeth grated against each other. If Luna thought talking so casually about Pinkie Pie dying was making anything better, she was bucking the wrong tree. So what if they weren't sure what the poison it was? They could still use the time to drag Pinkie down to some help.
Likewise, there are other mundane poisons that are equally effective, but an Earth Pony is normally resistant to most of them because of the inherent magic. If Rigdon laid his hands on your friend in that case, it might have hastened the poison's work, if only a little. The risk was not worth it.
She turned to the armor figure.
Rigdon, we need to remove as much of the poison from her stomach as possible and get her to the infirmary. Letting a guest die unattended in our chambers will not do.
This had better be her way of relieving the tension with a stupid joke, because if she really meant that, she was getting so bucked.
I've got it,
he said. He knelt next to Pinkie Pie and pulled her up with his embrace. Applejack and Fluttershy refrained from making any protest. He seemed to know what he was doing, and at least it was something that would aid Pinkie. He scooped out the foam from her mouth and then forced two of his long fingers inside her throat. Pinkie was still wiggling and choking until she gave a loud gag, and he turned her head so he could empty her stomach. A torrent of half-digested soup, vegetables, candy, and brown sludge covered the carpet. When she was done, Rigdon nodded at Luna and waited for instructions.
Good. You will have to carry her down to the castle's infirmary. Even levitation magic is dangerous for her now, but thanks to your ability, you are the best method of transportation.
Rigdon shifted Pinkie in his grasp, one hand forcing Pinkie's head tight against his chest, the other wrapped around her body. Rigdon paused before heading out and he looked at the still unconscious Twilight, regret emanating in waves from him.
Can you carry Twilight down there, please? I want to get a doctor to check her out, too.
Rarity and Rainbow too,
Applejack added. They weren't leaving any pony behind.
Of course.
Luna agreed as she lifted the other three mares in her magic too.
Rigdon, we will be making our way down on our own. If you could rush with Pinkie Pie, please.
Rigdon nodded at her command and sprinted out. Pinkie was still trembling in his arms. He only halted for a few seconds at the door to look behind him, at a pensive Spike. The little dragon whispered an apology on the verge of tears. Rigdon only stood long enough to flash him a proud smile before running out of the door. There we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this little longer chapter, as it's kind of hard to find good stopping points when we constantly swap between the in-time situation with Pinky and the background behind Rigdon, which is getting increasingly more and more interesting. What else is interesting are my wonderful donators. Thank you Chase Lemaster, HKH4 aka Texture, Triss, the Animated Ghost, and another large thank you to Silent Titan. Seriously, I appreciate you guys so much. If you want other ways to support, your viewership is more than enough, but leaving a like and a comment down below does help a lot with the algorithm, and I appreciate it all a ton. Anyways, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.